Julio Jones became the fastest player in NFL history to reach 10,000 receiving yards, doing it in just 104 games. From 2014 to 2019, Julio averaged 103.8 receiving yards per game, including 5 seasons with at least 1,400 yards, as he owned the 2010s. And when it was all said and done, he'd shattered every major receiving records in Falcons history. At 6'3", 220 pounds, with 4.39 speed, Julio was a physics problem defenses couldn't solve. Too big for corners, too fast for safeties, too technical for double teams. All-pro cornerback Patrick Peterson even said, he's definitely one of those mutants. Somebody definitely created him in a lab somewhere with Dr. Doomsville or someone. And yet, for all his dominance, he never won a Super Bowl ring. So how good was Julio Jones actually? Foley, Alabama, a quiet town near the Gulf Coast where Friday nights meant one thing: football. And in the middle of that world was a kid named Quintoris Lopez Jones, but everybody would come to know him as Julio. By the time he got to high school, he was 6'3", built like a grown man, and could move like few high schoolers on the planet. He tore through Alabama's track scene, winning state titles in the long jump, triple jump, and high jump. He could run the 100 meters in 11.1 seconds, soar 24 feet through the air, and still make time to dominate on the basketball court. He was named Mr. Alabama Track and Field, and by the end of his high school career, he'd collected 6 state titles. That raw explosion on the track translated perfectly once he fully committed to football. In his junior season alone, he put up 75 catches for 1,306 yards and 16 touchdowns. People started calling him Waffle House.
Why'd you call him Waffle House?
My way open. What are you talking about?
Nice.
Rivals.com ranked him the #1 wide receiver in the nation, a 5-star recruit who could change an entire program. And on National Signing Day, live on ESPNU, the kid from Foley made a decision that made the entire state erupt.
I'm be going to the University of Alabama.
Nick Saban had just taken over the program a year earlier and managed just 7 wins and 6 losses. He needed a player who could change everything. Enter Julio Jones. In his first college game, under the lights of the Georgia Dome, he scored a touchdown against Clemson. A few weeks later, he torched #3 Georgia for another score. By halftime, it was 31-0 Alabama. He just kept delivering. Over 100 yards against Tennessee, a clutch overtime grab at LSU. Big plays against Florida in the SEC title.
Julio was him!
The team in every major receiving category and became Alabama's first ever true freshman named SEC Freshman of the Year. Scouts were already comparing him to Larry Fitzgerald and Michael Irvin. Then came 2009, the so-called sophomore slump. Defenses schemed their entire plan around Julio, rolling safeties and doubling him every snap. And sure, his numbers dipped, but his impact didn't. All that attention opened up
Mark
the field for
Ingram.
Mark Ingram, who went on to win the Heisman and bring Alabama a national title. In 2010, Julio put it all together. Career highs across the board: 78 catches, 1,133 yards, and 7 touchdowns. He dropped 221 yards on Tennessee while playing with a broken hand. Then, in the Iron Bowl, he battled Cam Newton's Auburn with 10 catches, 199 yards, and a score. He capped off his career with a blowout bowl win.
That's what I hate about Julio, bro. It's just, he had everything, catches, yards, and everything. He just couldn't get in the end zone. That's it. He's one of my favorite players. He just couldn't get in the end zone.
Over Michigan State, adding a rushing touchdown for good measure. By the time he left Tuscaloosa, Julio Jones ranked 2nd all-time at Alabama in receptions and yards, and 4th in touchdowns, a legend before he ever stepped foot in the NFL. So it's no surprise that by the time the 2011 NFL Draft rolled around, Julio Jones wasn't just a top prospect, he was more like a myth. At 6'3", 220 pounds, he ran a 4.39 40 on a broken foot. Scouts couldn't believe it. He posted a 38.5-inch vertical, led the combine in the broad jump, and still looked unstoppable. Meanwhile, in Atlanta, GM Thomas Dimitroff believed Julio Jones was the missing piece for a team led by Matt Ryan, Roddy White, and Michael Turner. The problem? They were picking 27th. So Dimitroff went all in, trading 5 picks, including 2 firsts.
We traded 5. Okay, hold on. It was worth it because he became a dominant person. But we traded 5 picks for Julio Jones. We traded the 1st round pick of 2011, 2nd round pick 2011, 4th round pick 2011, 1st round pick 2012, and 4th round pick of 2012. for a first-round pick 2011 for Julio Jones. Oh, my goodness. He was him. He was indeed him. But, oh, my goodness, we traded the house for this nigga.
To Cleveland, just to move up to number 6. Atlanta had just mortgaged its future for one player. Now the city could only wait to see, was Julio Jones actually worth it? In his debut against the Chicago Bears, he put up 5 catches for 71 yards. 2 weeks later, against Tampa Bay, he put up his first 100-yard game with 6 catches for 115 yards and followed it with an 11-catch, 127-yard performance in Seattle. Then came Week 9 against the Colts, the game that flipped the switch. On one play, Matt Ryan uncorked a deep ball, and Julio turned it into an 80-yard bomb after he had already hit another one for 50 earlier that game. 2 touchdowns, 131 yards. But his rookie year wasn't without struggle. Hamstring injuries slowed him down, forcing him to miss 3 games and play through others at less than 100%. When he got healthy again late in the season, he closed with one of the most dominant stretches you'll ever see from a rookie receiver. Over his final 4 games, he posted 393 yards and 6 touchdowns. By the time the Falcons reached the playoffs at 10-6, Julio wasn't just a rookie anymore. He was the most feared weapon on the field. And in his postseason debut against the eventual Super Bowl champion Giants, he hauled in 7 catches for 64 yards. He finished his rookie year with 54 catches, 959 yards, and 8 touchdowns, leading all rookies in scores and ranking just behind A.J. Green in yards. But that was only the beginning, because against Kansas City in the 2012 season opener, he set the tone with 6 receptions, 108 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Atlanta's offense was a machine. Matt Ryan was slinging it, Roddy White was still a threat, and Tony Gonzalez was an ageless mismatch nightmare. But Julio, he was the engine that made it all terrifying. By midseason, he was putting defenses through nightmares. Against Philadelphia, Julio torched the Eagles for 123 yards and a touchdown. Then followed that up a week later by carving up Dallas for 129 more. One week, he'd blow past a corner with raw speed. The next, he'd body a defender like a power forward fighting for a rebound. The Falcons rolled through the regular season, finishing 13-3 and locking up the NFC's top seed. Julio finished with 79 catches.
We finished 13-3 that season? I know we made it to the NFC Championship, chat, but I didn't know we finished 13-3. Man, we went stupid that season.
198 yards and 10 touchdowns. His first 1,000-yard season, his first Pro Bowl. And alongside Roddy White, the duo became Atlanta's first pair of 1,000-yard receivers since 1998. In the NFC Championship against the 49ers, Julio put on a first-half clinic that felt like the birth of a superstar. 11 catches, 182 yards, 2 touchdowns.
He put that up in the first half? Nah, ain't no. He put up 182 yards and 2 touchdowns in the first half. We should have won that game.
Stormed out to a 17-point lead, fueled.
He put up 182 yards and 2 TDs in the first half of the NFC Championship against the 49ers. You gotta be shitting me right now. Come on.
Almost entirely by Julio's brilliance. But then, just as quickly as they rose, the magic unraveled. San Francisco clawed back and stole the game. But at just 23 years old, it was clear Julio was gonna be a problem. By week 5 of the 2013 season, Julio was leading the league in receiving yards with 580 yards in 5 games. That meant he was on pace for nearly 1,900. At that rate, he could have been on track for one of the best statistical seasons in NFL history. Then, in one moment, it all stopped. It was Monday Night Football against the Jets. Julio had already piled up 8 catches and nearly 100 yards. Late in the game, he went up for a routine jump ball, and when he came down, the crowd didn't notice anything at first. But Julio did. He had fractured his foot, the same foot he'd broken back at Alabama. For Atlanta, it was like someone pulling the plug on the entire season, as they went from 13-3 the year before to 4-12.
Damn!
Julio, the questions started to creep in. He'd now had 2 major foot surgeries, one in college, one in the pros. For a player whose entire game was built on explosion and precision, it was fair to wonder, would he ever be the same? But if you knew Julio Jones, you knew the story wasn't ending there. The 2013 season might have ended early, but it set the stage for one of the most impressive comebacks a receiver has ever had. Because when the 2014 season kicked off, it was obvious he hadn't lost a step. If anything, he looked faster. In the opener against the Saints, he put up 7 catches for 116 yards. By week 3, he exploded for 161 yards and 2 touchdowns in a 56-14 demolition of the Bucs. The Falcons, though, they were falling apart. The offensive line couldn't protect Matt Ryan, and the defense couldn't stop anyone. But Julio kept fighting. Late in the season, against Arizona's top-ranked defense, he set a new career high with 189 yards, bullying Patrick Peterson and making one of the league's best corners look helpless. And just when you thought he couldn't top that, he did. Week 14 in Lambeau Field, Monday Night Football, freezing temperatures, national spotlight. Julio caught everything. Short routes, deep shots, crossers in traffic, 11 catches for 259 yards against a playoff-bound Packers team that threw everything at him. Julio finished the season with 104 catches and 1,593 yards, both first in the NFC and top 3 in the entire NFL. He had officially answered the question everyone was afraid to ask, even if the Falcons finished 6-10. So, that summer, the Falcons locked him in with a 5-year, $71.5 million extension with $47 million guaranteed. Atlanta wasn't building around Matt Ryan anymore. They were building around Julio. And under new head coach Dan Quinn and offensive coordinator Kyle Shanahan, they designed an offense that did exactly that. By midseason, he already had 5 games of 135-plus yards. Week 15 against Jacksonville, 118 yards and 2 scores. Week 16 versus the 14-0 Carolina Panthers, Julio dropped 178 yards, including a 70-yard touchdown, where he mossed Luke Kuechly and 2 other defenders. By the end of the year, the numbers didn't even look real. 136 receptions, tying Antonio Brown for the league lead, and second most in NFL history at the time. 1,871 receiving yards.
That nigga was a beast. He was such a beast.
Just behind Calvin Johnson's legendary record, and 116.9 yards per game, one of the highest averages the league has ever seen. He even became the first wide receiver in Super Bowl era history to lead the entire NFL in total yards from scrimmage, something only running backs had ever.
You can't tell me this nigga wasn't that nigga, bro. 116 yards per game? Bro, I ain't gonna lie. Nigga can't argue me up and down. Julio's not one of the best wide receivers ever to touch a football, bro. I don't care about Jerry Rice. I don't care about Randy Moss. I don't care about T.O. I don't care about Justin Jefferson. I don't care about Jamar Chase. I don't care about the 2 niggas on the coast, Reggie Wayne or whatever the 2 niggas called. I don't care about nobody. Julio Jones is one of the best niggas ever to touch a football. Stop talking to me. Stop playing with me. He will argue with your mama, your grandmama, your daddy, your auntie, your cousin, your sister, anybody you want to argue. Your dog, your cat, your pet turtle, your shark, your fish. Argue with all of them. Julio is the best wide receiver to ever touch a fucking football ever. Stop playing with this nigga, bro. I don't care about championships. I don't care about nothing. He's the best goddamn wide receiver ever. Fuck that 11-year consecutive year from Jerry Rice. Fuck that nigga. Julio is him.
Done before. And again, Atlanta missed the playoffs, finishing just
ran a 4.39 and on a broken foot. Say if he didn't have that broken foot, he would have at least ran a 4.3 or a 4.3 flat or a 4.2 without a broken foot. You know what this man would have done? This man is
8-8, and Julio was tired of it. So, in 2016, he became a man on a mission. But little did he know, he was about to face one of the biggest heartbreaks of his career. Week 4 brought a rematch with Carolina, the same team that had gone 15-1 the year before, the same defense that had bullied their way to a Super Bowl. But this time, they were the ones getting bullied. Julio had 12 catches for a touchdown and 300
300 buns! That's 300 buns. Stop playing with Julio Jones.
He became just the 6th player in NFL history to ever reach that mark. Despite missing 2 games, he finished the regular season with 83 receptions for 1,409 yards and 6 touchdowns, as Atlanta finally found themselves back in the playoffs. In the divisional round against Seattle, Julio scored a crucial touchdown to keep Atlanta rolling. But in the NFC Championship against Green Bay, he delivered one of the greatest postseason performances of the decade, with 9 catches, 180 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And on football's biggest stage against the New England Patriots, Julio Jones was otherworldly. Every time Matt Ryan needed a spark, he went to number 11, and Julio delivered. His toe-tapping sideline grab late in the fourth quarter might be one of the most spectacular catches in Super Bowl history. That catch should have been the moment that had sealed Atlanta and Julio's first championship. Instead, a sack and a holding penalty pushed the Falcons out of field goal range. What followed became one of the most infamous collapses in sports history. New England stormed back from 28
You ain't gotta bring Patriots beat us Super Bowl, bro. You gotta beat. Come on, bro.
Julio's masterpiece was left buried under the rubble of heartbreak. Following such a devastating loss, the Falcons entered 2017 with more questions than answers. Every snap felt like a test of whether this team still had the heart to fight back. And right in the middle of that storm stood Julio Jones, still the focal point of every defensive coordinator's nightmares, still the freak of nature that broke coverages, ankles, and game plans alike. But through the first few weeks, he was oddly quiet. He didn't score his first touchdown until week 7. Then came week 12 against Tampa Bay, where Jones had 12 catches, 253 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He ripped off a 51-yard score on a simple crossing route. Yards, 12. In fact, goals and game planners nightmares.
Do you see that catch?
That broke coverages, ankles, and
oh my goodness! Just look at that catch.
Game plans alike.
That's
but through
disgusting.
The first few weeks, he was oddly quiet. In fact, he didn't score his first touchdown until week 7. Then came week 12 against Tampa Bay, where Jones had 12 catches, 253 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He ripped off a 51-yard score on a simple crossing route. And just when the Buccaneers thought they'd finally figured him out, he caught a touchdown pass from wide receiver Mohamed Sanu. That performance made him the first player in NFL history with 3 games of catching 250-plus receiving yards.
First nigga in NFL history. Ain't nobody got 250. Well, Jamar Chase does. He got 2. Like, this nigga has 3. Bro, come on, bro. Put some respect on Julio, Quantarius, Lopez, Jones' name.
Year's end, Julio had once again stacked elite production. 88 catches, 1,444 yards, and yet only 3 touchdowns. It was the paradox of his greatness, the most unstoppable force in football, and somehow still underused when it mattered most. But when the playoffs hit, Julio reminded everyone why he was built different. In the wild card round against the Rams, he carved up LA's secondary for 94 yards and a touchdown. Then, in the divisional round, came Philly, a defensive slugfest that came down to one final play. 4th down and goal with about a minute left. The entire season resting on one throw. Everyone in the stadium knew where the ball was going. Julio jumped up, got both hands on it, and the ball slipped through his fingers as he crashed to the turf, inches from glory. Julio finished as the number 4 player in the NFL's top 100, voted by his peers. But for fans, that year captured everything about him. Dominant beyond measure, yet cursed by the smallest margins. When Julio was on the field, you were watching the closest thing the NFL had to a superhuman. And somehow, even that wasn't always enough. Julio started the 2018 season hot, with 18 catches for 169 yards in the opener against the defending Super Bowl champion Eagles, setting a new franchise record with his 40th career 100-yard game, breaking Roddy White's mark. Just a few weeks later, he went for 173 yards against Cincinnati, then 144 more against Tampa. However, by the midway point of the season, Julio's scoring drought had become impossible to ignore. 12 straight regular season games, including some from the year before, without a single touchdown. Then came Week 9 in Washington. Midway through the game, Julio caught a screen pass, hit the Jets, stiff-armed a defender, and powered 35 yards downfield into the end zone. The drought was over. And from that point on, he went nuclear. In the final 8 games of the season, he scored 8 touchdowns. In Week 10 against Cleveland, Julio became the fastest player in NFL history to reach 10,000 career receiving yards, doing it in just 104 games. But while Julio soared, the Falcons crashed. Injuries ravaged the defense. The offensive line fell apart, and Atlanta stumbled to a 7-9 finish. And yet, at 30 years old, the age when most receivers begin to fade, Julio looked like he was just hitting his prime. So, just a day before the 2019 season kicked off, the Falcons gave Jones a 3-year, $66 million extension with $64 million guaranteed. At the time, the largest guarantee ever for a wideout. And from the moment the season began, he made sure everyone knew why. In Week 2 against the Eagles, he passed Roddy White again, this time for the title of Atlanta's all-time leader in receiving yards. The very next week, he torched the Colts for 128 yards and another score. Then, in Week 4, Julio reached 11,000 career receiving yards as the fastest player in NFL history to do it. Even when the Falcons fell apart, starting 1-7 and watching Dan Quinn's job hang in the balance, Julio was a constant force. Against Seattle, he posted 152 yards. Against the 49ers, he went off for 134 and 2 touchdowns, including a wild game winner with just seconds left. He finished the season with 99 catches, 1,394 yards, and 6 touchdowns, his 6th straight 1,300-yard season, a streak no receiver in NFL history had ever accomplished. By year's end,
nobody has ever accomplished, no wide receiver, 6 straight 1,300-yard season. No wide receiver has ever accomplished that. No wide receiver has ever. Bro, argue with your mama, bro. This nigga the best wide receiver ever on planet.
The Falcons were out of the playoff picture again. Another season where Julio's brilliance couldn't quite cover up the cracks around him. But by 2020, Julio started to feel the cracks himself, because a nagging hamstring injury started creeping up. He'd miss a game, come back for another, and still somehow explode for 137 yards and 2 touchdowns in a random Week 6 game against Minnesota. Even while hurting, he kept rewriting the Falcons' record books. In a Monday night game against Green Bay, he passed Roddy White to become the franchise's all-time leader in receptions. However, by season's end, he had played in just 9 games, finishing with 51 catches, 771 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Julio had been the face of the Falcons for years.
Bro, say if he would have played that whole season, oh my goodness. But that's another 771 yards in 9 games. Say if he would have played the other 6 to 7 games. Yeah, 7 games. He would at least 1,300 yards again.
When the Falcons season finally ended in a 4-12 disaster, everything changed. Because behind the scenes, tension had been brewing. Julio wanted out. He wanted a new shot, a real contender, a place where he could chase a ring before the clock ran out. On live television, Shannon Sharpe dialed Julio's number during Undisputed. The cameras were rolling. Millions were watching. And when Julio answered, he had no idea he was on air.
Man, look. You want to go to the Cowboys, Julio? Or you want to stay in Atlanta?
Oh, man, nah, I'm out of there, man.
You out?
He's out of there.
Not long after, it became official. Atlanta traded Julio Jones along with a 6th-round pick to the Tennessee Titans for a 2nd and 4th rounder. The move paired him with wide receiver A.J. Brown, a man who idolized Jones growing up. Not every day you get to play with the person that inspired you to play the game. Grateful, A.J. said. The best wide receiver to play the game in my book. And with Derrick Henry, the most unstoppable force in football in the backfield, this team looked unfair on paper. Emphasis on paper. Because Julio's debut against the Cardinals, it was rough. He looked out of sync and drew a costly penalty that led Mike Vrabel to publicly call him out.
That's absolutely nothing that we coach or teach. So that would fall into the category of doing dumb shit that hurts the team.
A week later, Julio exploded for 128 yards in the first half against the Seahawks, but it never stuck. A bizarre catch against Buffalo where the ball bounced off Micah Hyde's helmet before landing in Julio's hands was one of the few glimpses of magic all season. Beyond that, the hamstring that had haunted him for years came back. He was in and out of the lineup, placed on injured reserve, and returned in December, but he was never the same. By season's end, Julio had just 31 catches for 434 yards and 1 lonely touchdown. For a player who once made 1,400-yard seasons look routine, it was a harsh dose of reality. Tennessee still earned the AFC's #1 seed, and Julio still showed some fight in the playoffs with 6 catches for 62 yards against Cincinnati, but the Titans' season ended with a 19-16 loss. And just weeks later, Tennessee cut ties altogether. Now, Julio wasn't just looking for a new team, he was searching for another shot at the one thing that had always slipped through his fingers, a Super Bowl ring.
Breaking news, Julio Jones headed back to the NFC South. The former Falcons receiver is joining Tom Brady in Tampa. That's been confirmed by our Jonathan Jones. It's a one-year deal for the 7-time Pro Bowler who is now 33 years old.
Julio catching passes from the greatest quarterback of all time, both veterans chasing one last shot at glory. It was the kind of story that writes itself. And right out of the gate, it looked like the dream might come true. In Week 1 against Dallas, Julio turned back the clock, hauling in a 48-yard bomb. But not long after, a partially torn PCL sidelined him for weeks. And when he did return, he was never quite the same. Still, even in limited action, Julio managed to make a bit of history, scoring the first ever touchdown in an NFL game played in Germany, a 31-yard strike from Brady against the Seahawks. Julio finished the regular season with 299 yards and 2 touchdowns in just 10 games. In the wild card round against Dallas, the same team he torched back in Week 1, Julio led Tampa Bay with 74 yards and a touchdown, refusing to go quietly. But the Buccaneers fell 31-14, Brady retired for good, and Julio's chapter in Tampa quietly closed. In 2023, Jones signed with the Eagles, where his role was small, but the respect he commanded was enormous. Even cornerbacks half his age knew what he'd done. They remembered the man who used to dominate their heroes. In Week 17, Julio gave fans one last glimpse of that greatness, catching 2 touchdowns against Arizona. It wasn't about the numbers anymore. It was about pride, about finishing on his own terms. But despite his endless greatness, Julio retired without a Super Bowl ring. So that begs the question, how good was Julio Jones actually? When you look back at the 2010s, you realize just how stacked that era was for wide receivers. Antonio Brown was rewriting the record books in Pittsburgh. DeAndre Hopkins was making impossible catches look routine in Houston. Odell Beckham Jr. turned sideline grabs into viral moments. And A.J. Green was silently dominating in Cincinnati. But Julio Jones wasn't part of that group. He was the one the others measured themselves against. From 2014 to 2019, Julio averaged 103.8 receiving yards per game and had 5 seasons with at least 1,400 yards, tying Jerry Rice for the most in NFL history. Julio's career average of 82.5 receiving yards per game.
Are y'all hearing these stats right now, my nigga? Like, are y'all listening to these stats? Bro, this nigga is unbelievable. He's unbelievable. I love you, Quintorius Lopez.
Stands out as one of the highest in NFL history. He became the fastest player in NFL history to reach 10,000 receiving yards, hitting that milestone in just 104 games. He broke every major receiving records in Falcons history. And yet, for all his accolades, Julio never needed theatrics. He wasn't just one of the best of his era. He was one of the most dominant receivers the NFL has ever seen. Jones didn't redefine the position through flash or personality. He did it through production, precision, and physicality, unlike any.
Production, precision, physicality. Bro, come on, bro. This nigga is
If you enjoyed this video, stick with us.
unbelievable.